right? That was actually in March, if I'm not wrong. And that's a big sporting event. But that leads up to actually what we're going to talk about today, which is when it gets to the pro level, what sort of gear are you getting? Or why would you invest in specific gear for sports and wildlife photography? Now, these two, let me say, genres of photography have similar gear, but today we're going to be highlighting specifically the ones that I would highly recommend for professional photographers who want to get the best of everything. That means quality, speed, and sharpness when it comes to sports and wildlife photography. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be focusing on the Canon EOS R5, the Canon R5 Mark II, the Sony A1 Mark II, and the Sony A7R5. We're going to be going we're going to be going very in-depth into these cameras, into the specs, why these are the ideal cameras for sports and wildlife photography, and of course we're going to mention a little bit about the lenses as well, but today we're going to go over the or let me say the reasoning behind why you invest in these cameras for sports and wildlife photography. Okay, so with that being said, to everyone that's joining, thank you for joining us. If you have a friend who's interested in sports or wildlife photography, or if you would just like to learn something new, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to be talking about sports and wildlife photography on a professional level. And as you can see with the gear that I have on the table with me today, it's a serious conversation. But yeah, yes, Lee. Yes.
Someone is asking for an event photographer in sports. What body and lens should I get? But he's leaning more towards the brand Canon.
Okay, that's actually something we'll cover later on in the live stream. Um, whether you're leaning Canon or Sony comes down to the nitty-gritty, because the whole point of today's live stream was we're going to get into the specifics. Like, into the nitty-gritty of these cameras and what makes them special and why each one, or the pros and cons of each one for sports photography. Now, in your case, you've mentioned you do sports and event photography. And if you're leaning on, let me say, the Canon side, I'd highly recommend opting for the R5 Mark II, purely because of the updated video capabilities and the updated AI capabilities. But those are things that we'll cover in depth a bit later on. But if you're leaning on the Canon side, go for the R5 Mark II. It will deliver incredible results, and it is, in my opinion, quite a bit of value for your money. If you're leaning on the Sony side, again, depending on your budget, I, funny enough, would personally opt for the A7R5 over the A1 Mark II. And I will explain why a little bit later. But for now, if you're a Canon shooter and you'd like to get a really good camera for events and sports photography, opt for the R5 Mark II. It will not disappoint you. And if you're wondering what the price for that is, the R5 Mark II is actually currently on offer here at Cameras Africa, and it is retailing for 508,200 shillings. But always keep in mind, whenever I give you guys prices during the lives, always call, DM us, come to the shop, confirm these prices, because they are always subject to change. Okay, guys? Okay, so I hope I've answered that question. Okay.
Vibe State is asking how much is the A7R5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can answer that.
Okay, so who have been joining late? I've already answered this twice now. So for the person that's asking, the price for the Sony A7R5 is currently retailing at 366,000 shillings. But again, I will always repeat myself on this, guys. When you want to get these items, always come through the shop, confirm the price, confirm the availability, and we will sort you out. Always keep in mind these prices are subject to change. So don't put me on prices here. Call us, DM us, or come to the shop for the best prices available, and we will sort you out at Cameras Africa. Yeah.
And also maybe you can mention, in case you don't hear noise,
Mm-hmm.
because there's something happening outside.
Okay. Okay.
And as I said,
Mm-hmm.
there is Messi Raw, and which low budget camera do you have for
That needs its whole, that's an entire live stream. Didn't we do that earlier this month? I think we actually did cover entry-level cameras earlier this month in our live streams. So to the person that asked that question, it purely depends on what exactly you want to shoot. I could recommend a lot of cameras for entry-level, ranging from the 250D to the R50 to the R8, depending on your budget, your needs, and of course what you want to achieve with the camera. So if you could give us a bit more details, or DM us or call us and provide us with a bit more details on exactly what you want to achieve, then we can recommend for you a good camera that's good for entry level. But if you just want something that's simple to use, easy to learn, is good value for your money, my recommendation would be the EOS R50 with the dual lens kit, currently available at Cameras Africa for 126,000. With that, for a beginner, you sorted for number one, 2 lenses, and again, ease of use, and also something that is easy to learn, easy to use, and will deliver good quality images.
but as much as doesn't what they want to
Should,
get into.
yeah, that matters more. So that's what I was saying earlier. So for the individual that's asked, if you could DM us, call us, or just come to the shop and give us more details on exactly what you want to achieve with the camera, we will be able to recommend for you something more precise or more in line with your needs. But if you just want a good general all-purpose camera that can be used for, general photography, learning photography, as you figure out your niche in photography or videography, my recommendation would be start with the R50 dual lens kit and then go from there, or start with the Sony A6400, currently on offer at Cameras Africa. But again, I will reiterate this a million times. Please DM us, reach out to us, give us more details so that we can serve you better. So, with that being said, I think, Louis, we can start today's live stream. Okay, so in case you guys hear a bit of background noise, there is stuff happening outside our shop. And for those of you who don't know, we are located along Kenyatta Avenue, right next to Sora Stanley, at a building called Westminster House. But if we put us in Google Maps, so if you just Google us, it'll give you the directions to our shop. With that being said, I think now we'll step into today's live stream, and I'm going to ask you guys a simple question. Imagine, say for example, a cheetah is sprinting at full speed, or a football player, because apparently a really big game happened yesterday, or a Formula One car is, driving past you, or a really fast car is driving past you for the winning goal, or, it's the winning touchdown for football, or it's the winning goal for soccer, or it's the fast car in, the ongoing Formula One season. How do you capture that moment? Because you only get a split second to capture magic. Miss that moment and it's gone forever. And that's where this gear comes into play. That's where the pro level gear comes into play. When it comes down to the nitty-gritty, to the minute to the millisecond, when you need to capture that magic, that moment, the minute that car passes the finish line, the minute that cheetah finally catches an animal, the minute that game-winning goal goes into the net, capturing that magic moment is key, and missing that moment, it's gone forever. You cannot recreate those winning moments because you can't recreate these things. So how do you capture that moment of magic? That's where these cameras come in. That's where these pro-level cameras come in. Now, this is not to say that entry-level cameras cannot achieve good results. You can do a lot with entry-level cameras, but today we said we're going professional because you guys asked for us to give you more professional, and that's why we're going with the higher-end gear. We're going to be focusing on why having a camera with incredibly fast shutter speeds and high resolution matters, and how it helps you get the best results for sports and wildlife photography. Because you need to keep in mind that for sports and wildlife photography, speed, autofocus, reliability, and image quality are absolutely critical. There are no exceptions. There are no exceptions for this when it comes to sports and wildlife photography. Speed, autofocus, reliability, and image quality are the four crucial factors that make it or break it for professional sports or wildlife photographers. So for today, we're going to be focusing on the Canon R5, the Canon R5 Mark II, the Sony A1 Mark II, and the Sony A7 R5. Yes, Louis?
Is a question. Is the A6400 compatible with the Canon EF lenses?
No, it is not. The Sony A6400 uses the Sony E-mount, which is the specific E-mount for Sony E-mount cameras. Canon EF mount is specifically for Canon EF mount cameras. If you would like to use your Canon cameras on your Sony A6400, we do have adapters that allow you to mount that lens onto your Sony camera. So if you already have, let's say for example, a couple of Canon lenses and you want to switch over to Sony, we do have adapters that allow you, that are mounted on your Sony A6400, that allow you to mount and adapt Canon EF lenses onto your Sony camera. So I hope I've answered that question. Oh, and the price of that adapter is 19,800 shillings. Available also at Cameras Africa. Yes.
I have a budget of 30,000.
Yes.
What can I get with this?
A good savings plan or something where you can mature, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm gonna be very brutally honest. For 30K, you're stretching it. There is not much you can do with 30K if you want to get into videography right now, because for that price point, from, let me say for example, from 0 to around 55,000 shillings, for that price point, you're better off investing in a good phone camera that can deliver really good quality. Because when it comes to cameras, quality and specs matter a lot. And the base level camera that we have here at Cameras Africa that can deliver 4K video quality without an issue is the Canon EOS R100, which retails for 55,000 shillings. So for 30K, I'm sorry to say we don't have a camera that can put it down budget, but if you can up the budget a little bit to up to around 55,000, You could start off with the Canon EOS R100, or if you could stretch your budget even higher, start with the Canon EOS R50 for 125,000 and you're sorted. So I hope I've answered the question. And with that being said, I will now proceed to what actually matters in sports and wildlife photography. So the first thing that I mentioned was autofocus, speed, and accuracy. So there is something with mirrorless cameras that, in my opinion, is the reason why mirrorless cameras are the kings of sports and wildlife photography. And that is something called predictive tracking, especially for birds in flight, animals in a chase, cars in a race, people in a match, athletes mid-action. Having a camera with predictive tracking, autofocus for both human and animal subjects, and AI-powered subject detection are absolutely essential. Let me repeat myself for the guys who might be lost. So with newer cameras, let's say for example the Sony A1, the Sony A7 R5, the Canon R5 Mark II, there are certain features that these mirrorless cameras have that. So for the cameras that I have on the table here with me, the Sony A1 Mark II, the Sony A7 R5, the Canon R5 and R5 Mark II, these cameras have specific autofocus, speed and accuracy features that put them a significant step above all the other cameras that we have in store. Yes, you might have an A7 IV, you might have an R6 Mark II, you might have an R8, you might have, let's say for example, even a Nikon Z6 or a Sony A6700. But at the end of the day, the professionals are going to opt for these crazy expensive cameras because of, number one, predictive tracking, especially for, like, for example, birds in flight, animals in the middle of a chase, athletes mid-action, cars in the race. You need a camera that has predictive tracking, and newer mirrorless cameras like the R5 Mark II, the A7 R5 and the A1 Mark II have this inbuilt. They also have eye autofocus. Now this is actually goes two ways. So eye autofocus is not only in the camera, but like, say for example with the Canon EOS R3, you have a camera that can actually follow your eye as the photographer to track and keep focus of the subject. So you see where I'm going with this when it comes to autofocus, speed and accuracy. And besides that, with newer Canon and Sony mirrorless cameras and Nikon mirrorless cameras, you're getting AI-powered subject detection. So that means that when you set it to AI-powered subject detection, you're letting the camera use the inbuilt AI. Yes, cameras come with inbuilt AI these days that has subject detection. So that means that when you point your camera at a subject, at a frame, if you're, let's say for example, at a racetrack, it has AI-powered subject detection, so which means that if you are at a racing track and you point your camera at the track, it will be able to detect the difference between a car, a person, a bird, a plane, or even just a human being. And that is something that I think for sports and wildlife photographers is an absolute game changer, because you step away from having to worry about focus points, or is it in eye autofocus, is it in center autofocus, it takes away from you having to worry about what type of focus mode you're using, and it empowers you using AI and auto detection, so that when you point your camera at something, it knows, oh wait, this is a car, or this is a person, or this is a bird, or this is an animal, and it does the autofocusing better than you could imagine. The next thing we're going to talk about is frame rate. Now, when we talk about frame rate, we're talking about burst shooting. Burst shooting is how many pictures, when you press your finger down on the shutter like this, how many shots it can take within 1 second like that. So burst shooting 10 FPS, that's okay, that's good. But 20 to 30 FPS is the creme de la creme and is the ideal frame rate or burst shooting rate for sports and wildlife photography. So also keep that in mind. The next thing we're going to talk about is buffer depth. Entry-level cameras, mid-range cameras, the processors on them are equivalent to, let me say also with your phones. Cheaper phones tend to have simpler more cheaper processors, meaning that it won't be able to run as fast as, let's say, for example, a flagship phone. Same thing applies to cameras. The processor that's in the R5 Mark II, in the A7 R5, in the A1 Mark II is significantly faster than the processor that is in, let's say, for example, a Sony A7 IV, a Sony A6700, a Canon R5, or these other cameras. That buffer depth, or the amount of time a camera that can handle hundreds of shots before slowing down, is absolutely crucial. And that also depends also with the type of card you're using. So when you get into these incredibly fast burst shutter rates, you need to keep in mind that if you don't have a fast enough SD card, it's time to invest in something called CF Express cards, which compared to SD cards, most SD cards max out at maybe 300 megabytes per second, which is fast, yes, and can shoot up to 4K or 8K video. But if you want the creme de la creme of speed and buffer time and read and write speeds, go straight for the CF Express cards that give you up to 1,700. That's usually 1.7 GB per second. So that means that if you're shooting the read and write speed on an R5 Mark II, on an A7 R5 or an A1 Mark II is significantly faster and higher than an entry-level or a mid-range camera. The next thing you're also going to be looking at is durability and build. Weather sealing and rugged body design are non-negotiables. Let me repeat that. Weather sealing and rugged body design are non-negotiable. So something you'll notice, like say for example with the R5 Mark II, is that when you open the camera like this and you expose the sensor, around the rim of the mount is what I call weather sealing. Let's look at the A7 R5. Same situation. What this does is simple. With entry-level or mid-range cameras, you might not have the leisure of having weather sealing or a rugged body. And this is an issue when it comes to sports and wildlife photography, because in that situation, the weather or the conditions that you're shooting in are purely determined by the weather, which of course we cannot control. So what if you're out in the wild and it starts raining or it starts drizzling? If you have an entry or a mid-level camera, the moment water gets anywhere near the mount or the camera itself, you run the risk of short-circuiting your camera and frying it. However, if you have a weather-sealed camera, for mild rain, dust and things like that, your camera's internals are protected when you invest in these higher-end cameras. And that is something that I think is very crucial to consider, especially for sports photography. There is a really good friend of ours, a friend of Cameras Africa. I've forgotten his name. He wears specs. He's an incredible photographer. He recently did a TikTok video whereby he was covering the rally, and you should have seen him after the shot. He was literally coated in dust. It looked like he had showered in dust. But if you look at his gear, it was also coated in dust and debris, but he wasn't worried about it. Not because it can't cause damage. Yes, excessive dust can cause damage, but because the camera and the lens he's invested in are weather sealed, means that the internals of the camera have a little bit more protection compared to entry-level and mid-range cameras, which in such situations you'll start finding that if dust or like water gets anywhere near like your mount or into your camera's body, something is bound to go wrong. Now, none of these cameras are waterproof, so of course don't go diving underwater with them, but having weather sealing is something that I think is absolutely critical and non-negotiable for sports and wildlife photographers. Yes, Louis?
Doesn't have to do with anything we're talking about, but
Yes.
who's this? More Ibrahim.
Yes.
And Eliza, how much is Osmo Action 5?
Okay. To answer your question, Ibrahim, we do not sell the Osmo Action 5 Pro. We actually have the GoPro and the Insta360 Ace Pro and the Insta360 X3 and X4. We do not sell the DJI Osmo Action 5 action camera because we actually have quite a bit of GoPro Hero 13s that are currently on offer at Cameras Africa, retailing for 45,000 shillings if I'm not wrong. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to the next section, which is resolution. More megapixels allows for better cropping without losing quality. Now, these cameras are all full frame cameras, meaning that they have the equivalent of a 35mm film sensor. A7R5 full frame, A1 Mark II full frame, R5 Mark II full frame. Hasselblad medium format, Fujifilm GFX 100X medium format, significantly larger. But we're not talking about that now. We're talking about what we have here on the table. Resolution matters, and it matters a lot, because if you have a crop sensor, you cannot crop into that image a lot without beginning to lose quality. But if you have a full frame camera with high resolution sensor, you have the room, let me say you have the room to take a picture. Of course, always shoot in RAW. Again, sports wildlife pros always shoot in RAW. Like, I don't know any professional sports wildlife photographer that shoots JPEGs. They might shoot JPEGs, or they might shoot RAWs and JPEGs for faster sharing if the photos need to like go out as soon as they've been shot. But in such a scenario, it becomes now down to the end user. Do you need to shoot RAWs and JPEGs, or do you just need the raw photos? Now, in that case, I always say this: always shoot RAW. And when you shoot RAW on these full frame cameras, say for example the A7R5, which has a 60 megapixel sensor, should you need to crop into that image, you can crop into that image and still retain image quality without losing or without getting any degradation in the photo itself. So always keep that in mind, and that is why full frame cameras and high resolution full frame cameras are the ideal cameras for sports and wildlife photographers. Okay, so with that being said, Louis, I'm good. Do you have any questions from the viewers? Okay, so I think with that, we can move on to the Canon R5 versus the Canon R5 Mark II. So these are two cameras that are, well, they're more or less brothers. And the reason why I say that is because the R5 Mark II is the updated version of the Canon EOS R5. Still a very widely used camera, a really loved camera actually with professionals. And that is because, number one, you have a camera that has a 45 megapixel sensor. It has a burst shooting rate of up to 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter, or 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter. You also have dual pixel CMOS AF2, which is Canon's incredible autofocusing system, and it can capture 8K video quality, and its body is magnesium alloy with excellent weather sealing. The only limitation of the Canon EOS R5, which the R5 Mark II destroys, and is actually the reason why the R5 Mark II exists, is the heat limitations for long 8K video shooting. So, I know we're talking about photography, but having a camera that's 45 megapixels, can shoot 8K video, and has a 20 frames per second burst rate is absolutely insane in my opinion, because within that 1 second, like this, you can take 20 raw full frame images. Absolute game changer. So who is the Canon R5 perfect for? The R5 is perfect for fast moving wildlife, for high intensity sports, and for hybrid photo and video shooters. So where does the Canon R5 Mark II come into play? The R5 Mark II basically builds on what the R5 Mark I already has. With a new upgraded sensor, which is 60 megapixels, the R5 Mark II has a 30 frames per second burst shooting rate with an electronic shutter. It has improved autofocus with AI-trained subject detection, and it has better cooling system, meaning that when you're shooting with the Canon R5 Mark II, the only issue with the R5 used to be overheating. The R5 Mark II does not have that issue, or it's been mitigated to the point where it becomes a non-issue, or it becomes a point whereby if your camera is genuinely having heating issues, they literally have an accessory to keep your camera from overheating. So if you're budget conscious, the original R5 is unbeatable. It is excellent value for your pocket. It goes for around 405,000. Let me confirm that price right now. Yeah, the Canon EOS R5 currently goes for around 431,000. Again, in my opinion, for a pro photographer, I know saying this sounds crazy, but yeah, 435 is really good value if you're budget conscious and you want a good camera. The R5 is still unbeatable and offers really good performance. But if you want the best performance, the R5 Mark II is a powerhouse in its own class. Looking at the sensor, the shooting speed, and the video capabilities, the R5 Mark II is an absolute game changer. Next up, we go to the Sony A1 Mark II versus the Sony A7 R5. So, with the A1 Mark II, let's go over a few of its key points. The A1 Mark II has a 50 megapixel sensor. It has a 30 frame per second burst shooting rate that's blackout free. It has AI driven subject tracking. It has a huge buffer depth, so that means when you put your finger down and you're doing burst shooting, it has quite a bit of buffer depth, meaning that you can do it a lot. Like you could have a lot, or you can have a lot of images when you're shooting in burst shooting, and the camera won't lag or won't have issues reading and writing and processing those images. Next up, you have a viewfinder that is significantly better quality with 9.4 million dot electronic viewfinder with a 240 hertz refresh rate. Let me repeat myself. So the Sony A1 Mark II, 50 megapixels, 30 frames per second, blackout free burst shooting, AI driven subject tracking, and huge buffer depth, and a 240 hertz refresh rate. You heard me right. You see how monitors or gaming monitors or professional editing monitors have high refresh rates? The A1 Mark II has that in its viewfinder. So when you get the A1 Mark II, you have a camera whose viewfinder has a 240 hertz refresh rate, and it has pro level weather sealing. The strengths being that it is an incredible hybrid shooter for speed and quality, and it has exceptional color science and post-processing flexibility. So this is what I was saying about higher megapixels and full frame cameras. More megapixels means better quality, means that should you need to crop in, should you need to alter the image in post-production, you have so much data and room to play with the Sony A1 that you could crop into an image significantly, still retain quality, and still deliver really high resolution images without fault. Next up, we have the Sony A7 R5 overview, starting with the sensor. Now, funny enough, the A7 R5 actually has a higher resolution sensor, and it is actually in the name for the A7 R5. A7 R5 stands for resolution. So for Sony cameras, the R series stands for resolution, and the S series stands for speed. So if you get an A7S III, it's much better for videography, for low light shooting situations than the A7 R5. If you get the A7 R5, the R stands for resolution, which means that it prioritizes resolution, and that's why the A7 R5 comes with a 61 megapixel full frame sensor. However, that high resolution image sensor comes at a cost because the burst shooting rate for the A7 R5 is 10 frames per second. It has advanced AI autofocusing systems. It has incredible image quality. Again, 61 megapixels. That means that you could give this guy 20 megapixels, this guy 20 megapixels, and this guy 20 megapixels, and all of them will have 20 megapixels. So my point still stands. Image quality with 61 megapixels is insanely sharp. It gives you stunning detail and is amazing for cropping and editing your images in post-production. Next, it has the best in class articulating LCD screen. So specifically, when you remove the A7R5, you have this feature right here. This is literally considered one of the best in class articulating LCD screens, which don't come on normal, or let me say mid-range cameras, which is something that I think is an absolute game changer for professional photographers and videographers. And finally, you have a weather sealed camera, but it is significantly lighter than the A1 Mark II, and also it's significantly cheaper. So in summary, If you want ultimate speed, the A1 Mark II wins any day and every day. But for detailed wildlife portraits or sports photography or wildlife photography, the A7R5 is a masterpiece in a class of its own. So always keep that in mind. A7R5, 600 megapixels, high resolution, stunning detail, incredible image quality. Sorry about that. So yeah, A7R5, 61 megapixels, stunning quality, incredible image quality, sharpness, detail, and dynamic range. Or the A1 for speed and durability. So always keep that in mind if you're opting for these two cameras. One has the added advantage of significantly high resolution, while one has the significant advantage of speed and hybrid shooting. So, next up we're going to go into the recommended setups. So let's say, for example, you're the type of shooter that does fast action sports photography, like sports, racing, or something like that. Then my recommendation would be the Sony A1 Mark II. Why? Because of the blazing speed and durability of the Sony A1 Mark II. If you're a bird photographer or you like taking photos of flights or of birds in flight, the R5 Mark II is it. It's literally the creme de la creme. Why is that? Because the R5 Mark II has 30 frames per second and next generation AI autofocus. Next up, for the wildlife portrait shooter, the Sony A7 R5. Yes, Louis. Yes.
So we're getting a lot of comments,
Mm-hmm.
like complimentary comments.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that I never really knew that cameras over this, thank you for that. And I really love how you deliver. It shows your passion.
Yeah. That's from that's from who? Because when I told my entire family to watch my live stream, shout out to me. If I could give you guys a hug, I would. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it, guys. I genuinely do. I know my wife is watching. Thank you, babe. Thank you. Yeah, I know she's watching. I know wifey is watching. She's my number one supporter, so thank you to her. I think that comment is from her. But I know my family is watching. I always tell them to tune in and learn something.
We have Maina Momiki and explain the Canon RP and how much is it.
Um, yeah. Sorry, so to you, Simon, sorry, but if you like us to talk about the RP, we can schedule it for, let me say, next week, but one's live stream. That way we could talk about mid-range cameras. The reason why I'm trying to avoid talking about the EOS RP is because, number one, the primary focus for today is sports and wildlife photography, and the creme de la creme in terms of gear for sports and wildlife photography. The EOS RP is a good entry-level full-frame camera for people that want to get into professional videography, filmmaking, content creation, and they need a full-frame camera for the resolution and the video and image quality. The EOS RP is currently retailing for 135,000 shillings, and it is available right now at Cameras Africa. So, I hope I've answered your question, but with that being said, let me move on to the recommended setups for the cameras that we have here on the table. So, fast action sports. So, say for example, sports like football, rugby, Formula One, rally, and all of these racing type of sports. The Sony A1 Mark II is the #1 recommendation. Why? Because of the blazing speed and the durability of the A1 Mark II. If you're a bird photography or you like to take pictures of birds in flight, the R5 Mark II is the one to go with because of the 30 frame per second burst shooting rate and the next gen AI autofocus. If you're a wildlife portrait shooter, the A7R5 is the way to go because 61 megapixels gives you stunning detail and the croppability and the ability to alter your image and get the frame exactly how you want it is what you get with the 61 megapixels of the A7R5. And finally, if you're budget sensitive but need to get pro gear, the Canon the Canon R5 is the way to go because it's proven speed and it is still a 45 megapixel camera. So, that being said, let me speak a little bit about the lenses section. So, we've talked a lot about the cameras themselves and we've talked a lot about the features and the things that make these cameras stand out and make them, ideal for sports and wildlife photography. So, what about the lenses? I've said this once, I will say this twice, I will say this a million times. For sports and wildlife photography, a telephoto or a super telephoto is non-negotiable. Let me repeat that for the guys at home. If you're in sports or wildlife photography, a telephoto or a super telephoto lens are non-negotiables. And when I say a telephoto or a super telephoto, a telephoto lens is like this right here. This is the Canon 70-200 f2.8 RF mount lens. The reason why this lens is ideal for sports and wildlife photography is that zoom range from 70 to 200, which is ideal and which is needed for sports and wildlife photography. If, however, this doesn't do it for you and you genuinely require something with that much more extra zoom, then opt for this big guy right here, a 150 to 600 millimeter lens for the performance, the speed, the autofocus capabilities, and of course the stabilization that this lens offers. And if this isn't enough for you, then you can always opt for going ham, which in my opinion is this guy right here. This is the Canon RF 200 to 800 millimeter lens. If you're a wildlife photographer, if you're a sports photographer, this is it. Like, if you were to get one lens, in my opinion, to do everything for sports and wildlife photography, those are the three lenses that are highly recommended because of the focal lengths and the apertures. Now, there are actually other super telephoto lenses that we have. For example, we have a 300mm f2.8 lens. We even have a Canon RF 600mm f4 lens that retails for about 3.2 million. But yeah, it gets crazy the higher up you go. But the higher up you go with this type of gear, the better the results. Because take for example this, a 200 to 800 f6.3 to f9. That means that when you zoom in to 800 millimeters, the aperture will be fixed at f9. However, if you buy, say for example, the 600mm f4 lens, at 600 millimeters, you have a camera that has f4. You can only imagine the sharpness, the clarity, the bokeh, and the picture that lens can provide. But that lens is insanely big, and it costs around 3.2 million shillings. So, again, pick your fight. And in case you're wondering, guys, we have actually sold quite a few of those lenses, the 600mm f4 lenses. I wouldn't say to who, but a very popular sports photographer in Kenya has a 600mm f4 lens. And actually did have a 300mm f2.8 Sony lenses. Now, when you get to those super telephoto areas, the price does go up significantly higher, but you get the wider aperture in return. So keep that in mind when you're getting into sports and wildlife photography. A 70 to 200, a 150 to 600, a 200 to 800, or a super telephoto like a 300mm or a 600mm is an absolute essential for sports and wildlife photography. So let's have a quick recap of what we've covered today. The best cameras have to be fast, reliable, and deliver stunning images. And as you've seen from the cameras on the table, all of these cameras have over 20 megapixels in terms of quality. For example, the A7R5, 61 megapixels, the R5 Mark II, 50 megapixels, the R5, 45 megapixels, and the A1 Mark II, 50 megapixels as well. So that is something that is across the board an absolute essential. The best cameras for sports and wildlife photography have to be fast, They have to be reliable, and they always have to deliver stunning images and have to have a fast burst shooting rate to be able to capture the moment in that time. The Canon R5 and the R5 Mark II, the Sony A1 II and the Sony A7 R5 each shine differently depending on what exactly you want to prioritize. But as we've gone through all of these cameras, their key specs and their key features, I leave the decision up to you. So my question to you today is this. If you're getting into sports photography or sports and wildlife photography, or if you're already a professional in the field, of the cameras here on the table here today, based off of what I've talked about in terms of resolution, speed, burst rate, and everything else, which camera would you pick and why? So if you can, please tell us in the comments. We've talked about these cameras. I've told you a lot about their specs and what makes each of them shine. So we'd like to hear from you guys on which one you think or which one you would pick for sports and wildlife photography. So we're looking forward to hearing from you guys. We're looking forward to hear your feedback on which camera you would choose for sports and wildlife photography. Yes, Lou. Okay. So I mentioned this at the beginning of the live stream. Our location is Kenyatta Avenue next to Sarova Stanley. As soon as you Google us as Cameras Africa, you will find us on Google, and Google Maps will direct you directly to us here in Nairobi along Kenyatta Avenue. And to answer the other question, the Canon EOS R5 currently retails for 433,000 shillings with the 24-105 f4 lens. If you want to get it as body only, it retails for about 406,000 shillings. Okay? Yes, Lou. Yes. Sorry? Yes. Okay. We actually spoke about camcorders last week. For the individual that's asked a low budget live streaming camcorder, the one we highly recommend, although it's currently out of stock at Cameras Africa, is the Canon XA60V camcorder. It usually retails for 118,000 shillings. It is currently out of stock, so you can actually get something a bit higher, which would be the Sony Z90, which retails for around 245,000 shillings. If you're on a budget completely, you can order the Canon XA60 through us, and we will source it for you, and it retails for 118,000 shillings. So, with that being said, I hope I've answered all your questions, but now I give you guys a call to action. Whichever one you choose, you're putting yourself in the best position to capture unforgettable and unrepeatable moments. So let me repeat that again. Whichever one you choose, you're putting yourself in the best position to capture unforgettable and unrepeatable moments. Just like how in a wedding, if you're a wedding photographer, you can't miss the crucial shots of, may you kiss the bride. For sports and wildlife and action, it's the same scenario. The way a lion runs and chases after an animal and catches it is not the same way it will do it tomorrow. The way, or the car that crosses the finish line at the end of a race, the way Verstappen, finishes the crossing line compared to someone like Lando Norris in Formula One is not the same way. All of these moments, all of these magical moments happen once and are never repeated again. So when you invest in this gear, always keep that in mind. You're investing in something that's meant to capture a magical moment in the blink of an eye that can never be repeated again. So keep that in mind when you're investing in your camera gear. Yes, Louis? Yes?
Do you have anything for Polaroid?
No, we do not, but if you would like us to... Okay, sorry. So to the person that's asked, do we have anything for Polaroid? As of right now, no, we do not have Polaroid items in stock, but you can DM us. We do have suppliers who will be able to source for you Polaroid film stock and Polaroid pictures if you are in the market for those items. Kindly DM us or call us for more details. Yes, Louis? Okay, so with that being said, my final question to you is, what is your dream sports or wildlife photography setup? And would you rather have more speed or more resolution? Which one would you prioritize over the other? If you were to like have a limited budget and again you looked at the specs of all of these cameras, which one would you pick out of all of the ones you've seen here? Would you go for the R5 Mark II? Would you go for the A7 R5? Would you go for the A1 Mark II? Or would you go for the R5 Mark II? And why would you opt for that one? So please tell us down in the comments, DM us, come to the shop and talk to us. We love to interact with you guys. Or even come to your shop with your camera and test out this lens for yourself at Cameras Africa. But with that being said, I think I can call this live stream and I call it to a close. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us for this live stream. And thank you for all the support. Thank you for watching. And as we go into the Easter holiday, stay safe, be smart, and of course, have a wonderful Easter holiday from all of us here at Cameras Africa.
I think I mentioned if there's anyone who missed out and they want to watch the video, you still get to watch the entire.
Okay, yeah, and for anyone who would like to re-watch the video, or for anyone who is looking for a point of reference in the video, you can find the entire live stream on our YouTube page. Let me repeat that. If you would like to re-watch this live stream, or there's something that you'd like to quote or something that you'd like to clarify or re-watch later, you can find this entire live stream on our YouTube page at Cameras Africa. So, with that being said, I think for today I will call it quits and say thank you to our loyal viewers, thank you to our fans, thank you to our customers, and to all of you, I hope you have a wonderful Easter holiday. Stay safe, do the smart choice, or be smart, and of course, have a fun holiday. My name is Victor Mutua, this is Cameras Africa, and I will see you next time.